With me this afternoon are Commissioners Jeffrey A. Hughes and William M. Brawley. I now call for hearing docket number W-1333 sub 5 in the matter of application for certificate, public convenience and necessity, and approval of rates for Carolina Village in Currituck County. Before we proceed further, and as is required by the State Government Ethics Act, I remind members of the Commission of our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and inquire at this time as to whether any member has a known conflict with respect to the matters coming before us in this docket. All right, the record will reflect no conflicts have been identified, so we will proceed. On August 16th, 2023, Currituck Water and Sewer LLC, or Currituck, filed an application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity and for approval of rates to provide water and sewer utility service to the Carolina Village subdivision in Currituck County, North Carolina, in accordance with North Carolina General Statute Section 62-110. Currituck filed amended applications on September 20th, 2023 and November 14th, 2023. On February 14th, 2024, the Commission issued an order scheduling hearings, establishing discovery guidelines, and requiring customer notice, setting the consideration of the CPCN application for a public witness hearing on May 20th, 2024, and an expert witness hearing on July 8th, 2024. On February 29th, 2024, the Commission issued an order rescheduling the public witness hearing to May 9th, 2024. On March 26th, 2024, the public staff filed a motion to show cause in this docket, and on April 9th, 2024, the Commission issued an order scheduling a hearing on the public staff motion to show cause to begin on May 6th, 2024. On April 25th, 2024, the Currituck filed a response and an answer to the public staff's motion. On May 1st, 2024, the public staff and Currituck, collectively the parties, filed a joint motion for approval of partial settlement agreement, cancellation of hearing on motion to show cause, and agreed revised scheduling order. On May 2nd, 2024, the Commission issued an order acknowledging the partial settlement agreement, staying show cause proceeding, canceling show cause hearing, and continuing the CPCN proceeding, which, among other things, suspended all testimony filing deadlines put forth in the CPCN scheduling order and canceled the expert witness hearing that had been scheduled for July 8th. On May 7th, 2024, the parties filed a joint motion to cancel the public witness hearing scheduled for May 9th, stating that no customer complaints had been filed in the docket or received by the public staff. On that same date, the Commission issued an order canceling the public witness hearing. On June 13th, 2024, the Commission issued an order revising filing dates and rescheduling the expert witness hearing to take place at this date and at this time. On August 28th, 2024, Currituck filed the direct testimony and exhibits of witness Matthew Klein and witness Michael Myers. On September 20th, 2024, the public staff filed the joint direct testimony and exhibits of witnesses Lynn Fiesel, Gregory Rigger, and Charles Junis, some of which is confidential. On October 9th, 2024, Currituck filed the rebuttal testimony and exhibits of witnesses John Greer, Matthew Klein, and Michael Myers. On October 10th, 2024, Currituck filed the exhibits of Michael Myers, some of which are confidential. On October 24th, 2024, the public staff filed a motion to strike portions of the rebuttal testimony of witnesses Klein and Myers, or in the alternative, for leave to file an affidavit. On October 25th, 2024, Currituck filed its response in opposition to the public staff's motion to strike, or in the alternative for leave to file an affidavit, which included a cross motion to strike the testimony of the public staff. The public staff, which represents the using and consuming public, has been made a party to this proceeding in accordance with North Carolina General Statute Section 62-15 sub D, and there are no other intervening parties to this proceeding. All right, that brings us to today, and I'll call upon counsel for the parties to introduce themselves for the record, and we will begin with the applicant.
Please, Commission, my name is Edward Finley, Raleigh, North Carolina. Appearing on behalf of the applicant, Currituck Water and Sewer. With me at council table here is Matthew Klein, who is one of the witnesses. We have Megan Haller, who is admitted with the Indiana Bar. She's been admitted to practice for purposes of this case. Lisa Reston from the Womble Bond firm here in Raleigh. Mike Myers of the company, and John Greer, also from the company. Those latter two will also be witnesses.
All right. Well, good afternoon, Mr. Finley. Public staff.
Chair Mitchell, I'm Rita Coxton, appearing on behalf of the using and consuming public. Appearing with me are Mr. Will Freeman and Miss Gina Holt. Close to me at council table are our three witnesses, Charles Junis, Gregory Rieger, and Lynn Fiesel.
Good afternoon to the public staff. All right, before we begin, preliminary matters to be addressed.
Sorry, our pending motion to strike. If you'd like to hear about that now, Mr. Freeman can speak to that.
All right, Mr. Freeman, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. This is the motion that we filed on October 24th to strike, or in the alternative, motion for leave to file an affidavit in the record. And that motion relates to some rebuttal testimony filed by Mr. Klein and Mr. Myers. It was originally filed on October 9th, and I know there's been some supplements and amendments since then. And the rationale behind this is on October 9th, the company for the first time introduced some substantive evidence purporting to inform the Commission of the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality's thoughts and positions. And I would say, just as a general matter, I agree with the company that this commission is a sophisticated body and we often allow hearsay into evidence. I think in the present case, though, DEQ's thoughts carry a little bit of extra weight with the commission, and we would like to ensure that the commission has an accurate understanding of DEQ's thoughts and position. And I think that's especially true when the public staff has a different understanding of DEQ's position than the company. So those were the thoughts behind the objection to hearsay. I think, though, that we could address it by allowing it into evidence for sort of two purposes. One, as a cross-examination tool, and two, as a way to sort of, you don't have to listen to us or them. You just listen to DEQ and hear straight from the horse's mouth, as it were. I'd say I have commonly introduced facts, treatises, books, portions of newspaper articles, things into evidence that I've used to cross-examine witnesses with, and that's exactly what we're trying to do here. You've said X, this source says a contrary item. I think it's pretty common for the commission to do that. I know that you don't have to pre-file exhibits, so in a sense, the other side, the company had notice of exactly what was going to be used as a cross-examination exhibit, and it seems appropriate to let it into evidence for those purposes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Freeman. Mr. Finley.
Madam Chair. The ultimate issue in this case is whether Currituck Water and Sewer should receive a CPCN to provide water and sewer service in the Carolina Village mobile home park pursuant to 62-110, as you recited, or whether the mobile home park should remain beyond the jurisdiction of this commission. That's the ultimate issue here. This is not a new subdivision. The water and sewer systems have been in place for decades. There's no dispute that they are in disrepair and for years have needed improvements and replacements. The public staff goes to great length to say that because CWS, which has only owned the facilities for a short period of their existence and has been spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in rehabilitation without any compensation, does not have the technical and the managerial skills to receive the CPCN, and the commission should reject that request. The public staff panel goes through many, many pages of testimony questioning the system deficiencies. In order to rebut that testimony, Currituck Water and Sewer filed the rebuttal testimony of witnesses Klein and Myers. All of the testimony in this proceeding that is provided by expert witnesses. As you said, this is an expert witness hearing. The condition of the system is being judged by the oversight of the environmental regulator, among others, the Division of Environmental Quality. The CWS expert rebuttal witnesses are providing testimony in part that sets forth their reaction to the oversight of the environmental regulator and their reactions to the various interactions of those regulators. The public staff picks out a number of representations and conclusions of the CWS witnesses that they maintain are inadmissible hearsay or are not relevant. This is not a jury trial. This is not a trial in the Superior Court seeking damages where issues of fact are at issue. This is an administrative hearing, as everybody knows. The CWS rebuttal witnesses are providing their expert's opinion on the status of the water and sewer systems after CWS's ownership and what CWS is doing in response to the DEQ and regulatory requirements. The public staff cites Rule 602 of the North Carolina Rules of Evidence by arguing that a witness might not testify to matters that he does or she does not have personal knowledge. The public staff cites Rule 702 of the Rules of Evidence, which address expert opinion. They cite Rule R124, which provides that any evidence that is admissible under the North Carolina Rules of Evidence is admissible by the commission. The public staff cites Commission Rule R7, indicating that the commission may strike evidence that is irrelevant or immaterial. The public staff cites no cases by the appellate courts. It cites no cases, no orders by this commission. The public staff ignores the two cases cited by Currituck Water and Sewer, the Ledford and Hamill cases addressing the admissibility of hearsay evidence in administrative proceedings, which is routinely accepted, like this one. The public, more importantly, Madam Chair, the public staff doesn't mention NCGS 6265, which is the evidentiary statute in this Article 62 that says that the commission follows the rules of evidence only where practicable. And that's an admission that this is an administrative body and you don't follow strictly the rules of evidence. And the hearsay objections have been routinely denied. But if you're going to cite these other rules and other commission rules, surely to goodness, you're not going to admit the one that is most prevalent to what's going on here. The public staff accuses CWS of submitting hearsay testimony when one of its witnesses relies upon an investigation that the witness did not attend. The public staff relies upon some identified person who claims wastewater was thrown out the window of Eagle Creek, not the subdivision at issue here. This is the agency that provides testimony by engineers and accountants, prefaced by upon advice of counsel. That's what they do from time to time. The public staff has testimony addressing many systems other than Carolina Village. We determined not to bother the commission by asking to strike a lot of that. The public staff is offended by the prefatory objections to data responses that are interposed routinely by the Superior Court that this company has used in this case. We maintain that the testimony is not subject to exclusion under Rule 108, hearsay rule and the rule of evidence, because it is not asserted to prove the truth of the matters asserted therein. The witnesses have attempted to explain the extent to which they believe they are making progress to comply with the DEQ's requirements. The witnesses are entitled to relate to the commission their reaction to what they mean DEQ has directed. Should the commission grant the public staff motion and deny the piecemeal fashion the evidence relied upon by the expert witnesses in this administrative hearings, the commission, in my opinion, will be upsetting precedent that has existed from time immemorial. Your hearings, which are already lengthy, if you get into the weeds like this on hearsay testimony, in my opinion, will become marathons. It is the commission's longstanding practice to accept the evidence in which it is given by experts, and you say, we'll give that testimony the weight it deserves, and you're experts, and you have the ability to do that because we don't have a jury here. And in our view, what the public staff is really after, and that's what the emphasis was there, is to engage in what we would maintain is short rebuttal testimony through having an affidavit of the DEQ representative copied into the record when the witness is not present and when we have no opportunity to cross-examine that witness. Much of the, nobody disagrees that there are problems with this system and that this company is trying to correct them, and it is not proceeding along the same timelines that the regulators would like. That's really not an issue here. Much of the affidavit is the witness's opinion and statement supportive of its fellow administrative agency. Most of the affidavit does not even respond to the alleged hearsay testimony, but expresses an opinion upon the status of the improvements and the repairs to be made. Now let me just read you just a few of the pieces of testimony, company rebuttal testimony that they take issue with, just 4 or 5 of them. Based on discussions with DEQ, it is my understanding, this is what the witness says, that the lack of penalty issued for the collection system is due to improvements completed by DWS thereupon. And that's just an opinion, what you expect out of an expert. David May informed me that he wanted EnviroLink to have ORC in place. If you look at the purported affidavit here, Mr. May says the very same thing in his affidavit. The next one, I believe the CVWWT did not want to spend money on repairing or improving the Carolina Village MPH asset until tied to redevelopment. It's an opinion. I interpret the lack of NOV issued by DEQ as evidence that they recognize and appreciate the improvements CWS has made. So this is just garden variety expert testimony of witnesses that you hear day in and day out, every day in every case. You know, Mr. Tankard and Mr. May testified in W-133 sub-0. They could have come in here and testified if that's what the public staff wanted. And he says he's reluctant to do that. Mr. May says that, but he's already done that for purposes of this company. And I would remind the commission that Rule 124 provides that if the commission strikes testimony, the party whose testimony is stricken is given an opportunity to replace the stricken testimony with additional testimony. It is time to bring this protracted case to an end and a conclusion. You've got plenty of evidence to address and to assimilate. The commission has enough time to prevent it to proceed.
All right. Thank you, counsel. So I'm prepared to make a ruling, but before I do so, Mr. Freeman, 6268.
Thank you, Chair.
So just walk me through compliance with 6268, particularly that
I
first.
see. Yes, Chair. I would say that the affidavit was prompted by information that was filed this month so late that it was difficult for the public staff to absorb that, understand, communicate with the right people, and get an affidavit within this deadline. I know the commission has broad powers to alter deadlines when there's just cause. And here I think that given the sort of importance of this witness, the freshness of the information that kind of took us by surprise a bit, and then the fact it just takes a minute to get everybody together and get an affidavit filed, that we worked as quickly as we could, but we're unable to meet this 10-day deadline. So I would ask the chair for permission to alter it such that the October 20, I believe it was the 24th when it was filed, deadline is sufficient. Yep, it was filed on Mr. May's affidavit was filed October 29th. So we'd asked it to be shortened.
Was the date on which the affidavit was filed the first time that Currituck had seen the affidavit?
Yes, it was, Chair.
Okay. All right, I'm going to deny the motion to strike. We will allow the testimony in and we will give it the weight that it's due. Mr. Freeman, I appreciate the argument on 6268. I'm hesitant to, given the terms of the statute and the plain language of the statute, I'm hesitant to deviate from what I perceive as plain language because the affidavit wasn't provided to Currituck 10 days or more in advance of the hearing. Let me make sure I've got that right. I'm not going to let it in. Yeah, 10 or more days prior to the hearing.
Is it possible to use it not as evidence, but as a cross-examination tool then?
I will leave that to your discretion, Mr. Freeman, and we will fight that fight when we get there.
That'd be a rebuttal, so we can avoid that for a while.
All right.
Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely. Any additional preliminary matters before we?
No, Madam
Before
Chair,
proceed.
I think both parties inquired whether you wanted summaries of the testimony. We have summaries prepared to give. They're short. That'll depend on what you.
All right, we will dispense with the summaries. We've read the testimony. We don't need the summaries. I would ask that you file the summaries. We'll move those in. Let me say that differently. We will move those into the record when you've got your witnesses on the stand. Because I do find the summaries useful when I'm going back into the case. So I would like your effort is not for nothing. We will use them. I won't have the witnesses read from the stand. My notes, if I can find them, reflect that you all have agreed on order of witness and cross-examination times, and I'll ask counsel, do those times stand? Are there any changes to what you all have filed in this proceeding?
No changes for the public staff.
Okay,
The company's cross-examination of the public staff witnesses will be substantially shortened.
shortened. Okay, got it. Okay,
And did I hear you correctly that you would like for us to pass these out?
yes,
Be read.
please do pass them out and we will, that's right, the witness will not read them. All right, with that, Mr. Finley, when you get back to your seat, you can call your witness. Thank you.
That Water and Sewer would call Mr. Matthew Klein to the witness stand, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Klein. You can be seated. Raise your right hand, please, sir. Left hand on the Bible. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Mr. Klein, will you state your name and business address for the record, please?
My name is Matthew Klein, Alein. I'm with Currituck Water and Sewer LLC. My business address is 4700 Homewood Court, Suite 108, Raleigh, North Carolina.
And what is your position with Currituck Water and Sewer?
I am the president.
Mr. Klein, did you file in this docket pre-filed direct testimony consisting of some 25 pages in question and answer form?
Yes, sir.
That was on August 28, 2024. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
If the questions were asked of you today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, sir, with the exception of the brief amendment. On direct, no.
Right. Are there any corrections or additions you'd like to make to the direct testimony?
No.
All right. With that, Madam Chair, we would move that the direct pre-filed testimony of Mr. Klein be copied into the record. This will given orally from the stand, and that the exhibits that he attached to that direct pre-filed testimony be marked for identification as pre-marked in the filing.
All right, having heard no objection to the motion, I will allow the testimony of Currituck witness Klein filed on August 28, 2024, consisting of 25 pages to be copied into the record as if delivered orally from the stand. The exhibits to that testimony will be marked for identification as they were when pre-filed. Mr. Finley, would you confirm the number of exhibits to that testimony?
I counted them just a few minutes ago and came up with 18.
Okay,
Let me make sure that I counted them correctly.
That's correct. There were 18.
okay,
18.
thank you. The 18 exhibits to that testimony will be marked for identification as they were when pre-filed.
So, Mr. Klein is tender for cross-examination.
All right. Let's get his summary. Mr. Finley, if you would read his summary or
All right.
let's do this. Mr. Klein, did you prepare a summary of your testimony?
Yes, Madam Chair.
And has that summary been provided to the court reporter?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'd ask that the summary of the testimony be copied into the record as if delivered orally from the stand. And before we begin with cross-examination of the witness, I also want to, Mr. Finley, I'd ask that you move in the application, just so that we can have that into the record as well.
The company moves the application submitted in this case is along with the various amendments.
Okay. Let's see. Make sure I've got this right. The company's amended application with 17 exhibits filed in the docket on November 14th, 2023 will be received into evidence. Council, there were applications filed prior to this date, so on August 16th and on August 17th and on September 20th, 2023. Do we need to move those in, or does the amended application suffice?
I think the amended application suffices.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. All right. Let's see, with that, public staff, you may begin your cross-examination.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. Mr. Klein, I'd like to start by nailing down a few dates with your history with Currituck, as well as some key issues with the Carolina Village system. So first of all, you began working on the terms of the USDA loan that's been at issue and discussed a lot in this case in August of 2023. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe my tenure with Currituck began on August 28th, 2023.
And you became, so you had one role, your tenure, and then you were formally appointed as president January 23rd, 2024. Is that correct?
On or about that date, that's my recollection.
How would you describe that interim period of time? So tenure began, but you weren't president. So what was your role in that interim?
My role was materially the same. I think my recollection is that by changing my title was making it clear what my role was within Currituck, and then second, to enable me to have clear authority to retain consultants and experts to support the activities of Currituck Water and Sewer.
Okay. How many times have you visited the Carolina Village system?
I believe it is approximately 4 times. I believe, including the time we invited you and DEQ to attend, I think in April of this year. But I believe, subject to check, it's about 4 times.
Isn't it true that you had not visited the Carolina Village system prior to the site visit that gave rise to the public staff's motion to show cause?
I don't know. I'd have to check my records, but subject to check, I'm not sure. I'd have to check on that.
Okay. So I'd like to direct you to a portion of your pre-filed direct testimony where you discuss the prudency of the rates applicable to the USDA loan. Do you recall saying in your direct testimony that you approached the public staff or had counsel approach the public staff to discuss interest rates December 2023?
Could you point me to that in my testimony?
Sure.
And I think I have my direct testimony in front of me, so you can tell me where you're referring to.
So it starts on the bottom of page 16 and goes into the top of 17?
Okay, I'm with you. And can you restate your question?
Sure. You indicate in your direct testimony that you had Mr. Finley contact the public staff regarding concerns over the interest rate in December of 2023, correct?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
And that resulted in a meeting in January of 2024, correct?
Yes.
And are you aware of the interest rate of the loan at that time?
I believe the total interest rate, was a variable rate, was 10.25.
And in your testimony, do you indicate whether you thought that that was a prudent rate?
I believe that, I'm sorry, your question was, did I say that in my testimony? Or can you ask your question again? I want to make sure I understand it correctly.
Sure, and I'll quote directly from your testimony in case that will be helpful. So on page 17, starting at line 1, in my opinion, securing debt at 10.25% would be inappropriate, imprudent, and result in downstream challenges with the public staff and the commission. I am aware that certain large regulated drinking water or wastewater utilities have recently been awarded an authorized return on equity of 9.8%, much lower than the proposed 10.25%. So I question the prudency of such a high interest rate. Typically, in my experience, debt secured by regulated drinking water or wastewater utilities is less than half of the 10.25% figure. Is that correct? Did I read that correctly?
I believe so. I think my testimony has been entered, but I think your question again is,
Have you testified that securing debt at 10.25% is inappropriate and imprudent?
that is my belief, in my opinion. I also later in line 6 qualified it by saying I question the prudency of such a high interest rate. I thought it was important to consult with the public staff, to get your input, to communicate about the path we were on. And I appreciate the fact that you and your team were able to meet with Currituck to discuss that in January.
Do you know the point in time when the interest rate on that USDA loan would have been at that benchmark?
No, I had not tracked it before arriving in August to Currituck.
Would you accept, subject to check, that the interest rate on that loan would have been at that mark on July the 27th, 2023, before you arrived and became involved in the negotiations?
I really don't know, but I also would suggest that it's not clear whether that rate could have gone even higher, 12%, 16%. I believe the public staff offers testimony on that later that we can perhaps get to, but my chief concern was coming in, having to understand the long history of Currituck, and knowing that we were pursuing the USDA loan. My immediate reaction was to find the money to follow through on our commitment to repair the system. And I had to decide very quickly, is this USDA loan going to close? Are we going to get it? Risking that maybe with this 10.25 might become a rate case issue, or do I abandon it and pursue a different funding mechanism? And so that was what was facing me first day on the job, trying to understand this and see if we could get the money quickly to invest in the capital projects that we had proposed. So that's what was going through my mind, trying to demonstrate what I believe is our ongoing managerial, financial, and technical capability with Currituck. And when it became clear to me that, this USDA loan, number one, is kind of taking some time. And two, this interest rate seems to be a little higher than what I've professionally seen in these situations, given my work here in North Carolina. And so I did what I thought was prudent and meet with you and your team. And you were kind enough to do that and give me the sense that you thought 10.25 would not be viewed in a very favorable way. And that helped me move forward to get the equity quickly to invest in these capital projects that we have reported to the commission on a monthly basis. that we are working on and nearing conclusion. So that's kind of the way I view this part of my testimony. So thank you.
Understood. And would you say that 6 months is a quick turnaround time to make a decision like that?
I don't know what you mean by 6 months or a decision like that.
Okay, I'll restate. You began investigating this or considering it in August of 2023. The decision to close the transaction with equity financing was made in March of 2024, correct?
Yes.
So that is a deliberation period, if you will, of 5-6 months, correct?
I don't know if I call it a deliberation period. My deliberation period was very fast. I mean, it takes about 6 months for any new executive on the job to really get a handle on what's going on. I think trying to understand the long history, a 50 or half a century history of Currituck, and
Currituck-
doing so in, or Carolina Village, excuse me, and being able to come in and really focus on this loan and trying to move it forward. And deciding probably late November, early December that I need to sit down with the public staff and communicate my concerns and see what they thought about this particular interest rate. And because we had not previously heard from the public staff on this interest rate, and not knowing where you kind of thought this rate was and what it meant, wanted to get your input. And I took the concern I had about the pace of the loan with your observations about the interest rate, and I went to the Currituck, or I'm sorry, yeah, the Currituck board and said, I'm recommending that we move away from the loan and we go with equity. And in my mind, once they were convinced that that was the right decision, it was very fast for us to go from that point in January to getting it closed in March. So.
And you mentioned previously that you had to find the money. Am I remembering your testimony correctly?
I don't know if I used that term, but as I'm new to Bernhard, I have to understand as best I can how their processes work. And I'm not involved in those decisions or roles. My role is limited to being the president. But if there's capital that's needed, it is my role to make those requests and allow the internal processes to work. So.
Were you aware of the fact that Currituck had represented to the public staff that it was not dependent on the USDA loan in its initial CPCN proceeding before this commission?
I don't know if I recall that or know that. Is there a particular document that you can point me to that says that?
Yes, it's actually, it's referenced in our direct testimony. It is testimony filed by a public staff witness in the sub-zero docket based on information received from Currituck.
So that's not this sub-docket?
No, it's
Okay.
not. This is in when Currituck was granted its initial CPCN to operate in North Carolina,
Okay,
and Currituck was making assurances regarding its financial viability.
okay. So we didn't make that statement in the sub-5 docket in the application that was just entered into evidence, I think?
No, this is, no.
Okay. So you don't have any evidence that we made that same statement in sub-5?
Mr. Klein, I'm going to ask you to allow the council to ask the questions
Yeah,
and you
thanks.
provide the testimony
That's fine. I'm
All right,
trying, I'm
that's
trying to
that's-
understand what
that's-
statements were made in this docket. That's all.
in the interest
Sub-docket.
of moving things along here.
I'm merely trying to assess your understanding of Currituck's financial capability at the time you began your role as president.
Yeah. I don't have, I think the document you referenced, to the extent it exists and is part of this record or this proceeding, I think it speaks for itself. Obviously, my response is that was filed at that time and is not something that is immutable to change. I think in this particular sub-docket, Bernhard Capital, through the leadership of the organization, myself, and through EnviroLink, if we need funding of any sort, whether it's equity or debt, whether that's through USDA or SRF, we have the capability and the opportunity to provide the necessary resources to bring that funding to bear. So, and again, I'm not aware that we made that statement you referenced in sub-zero in sub-5.
Understood. Wouldn't you agree, though, that as the president, you should have a handle on representations that your agency is, or that your utility has made to regulatory bodies and things of that nature when you take on that role?
I do, and I have, and certainly I don't think I can be held to a standard of remembering every document that's ever been filed in the past for the company, but more than willing to, if you raise a document, I'm more than happy to review it.
Okay, so I'd like to move on to the improvements that have been made at Carolina Village. Do you recall what the average cost or the estimated cost the company provided for those immediate remedial repairs were?
Are you referring to a particular document? I'm not sure what you mean by me. Are you talking about the group of projects that we're working on or one of the projects?
I'm talking about in the monthly status reports that Currituck files, they indicate that the total spend or budget for the immediate things that needed to be done, the
Yeah.
ballpark for,
Yeah. I believe it was 100,000, the immediate R&R projects, 100,000, I believe.
did Currituck have access to that funding prior to March 27th, 2024?
I think we had access to it through our ability to ask Bernhard Capital for the equity that we needed. Did I answer your question?
Did you have the money in the bank to take care of those initial steps prior to the equity infusion?
I don't know. But I think that what you're asking is probably incongruent with the way that the funding has anticipated being secured. We did not go to USDA and ask them for 6 different loans. We didn't ask for a $100,000 loan and we need $700,000 for the wastewater treatment plant. We asked for funding to cover both Eagle Creek and Currituck. And I think we went the same path with going to get equity from Bernhard. The company is not an ATM machine. I mean, it is a highly regulated, highly sophisticated private equity firm. And so we don't, at least in my impression as the new president, I think it would be imprudent to just continue to ask for funding along the way. So
So I think you strayed there. I was asking, did Currituck have the money in the bank to fund those improvements prior to the equity infusion from Bernhard Capital?
I don't know that answer. I'd have to go back and look at bank statements, but obviously, you know, from the record that we're not charging customers. And so we don't have any, obviously some of that revenue coming in that we could use for that. So I'd have to go back and check to see whether we had that funding available.
Would you accept, subject to check, that your salary in the first part of 2024 exceeded the amount of those initial improvements?
In the first quarter of
2024.
no, I would not accept that.
Would you accept that there is information in the general ledger suggesting that the company provided?
I have not reviewed the general ledger, so I'm not sure what it suggests. I know that you have offered testimony on that, but I don't think you've offered a work paper that explains that. But that's my answer.
Just to be clear, though, you're not sure how much you were compensated by Currituck in the first quarter of this year?
That wasn't my answer. My answer is based on what I recall from the confidential number that is inaccurate. And I would point out, I don't think I received a data request that said, what is your compensation for the first quarter? But maybe I'm wrong. But I understand that you have tried to calculate that in some fashion, but I don't know how you got to that number.
What is your salary then, Mr. Klein?
For the first quarter or for the year?
Well, let's start with how much you received in your pocket while the folks at Carolina Village had lift stations that were nearly running over.
Um, uh, Lift stations running over. Well, is this the confidential portion of referring to my financial situation? Can we ask for that? Counsel?
I don't believe that's confidential, Mr.
All
Klein.
right. My belief is that annually it's 215. So if you break that out by the quarter, I don't think you get to the number that you put into your testimony. So be more than happy if you can explain how you got to that number. But again, I don't know what's in the general ledger, so we have a difference of opinion. So if that number you put in your testimony was true, then I agree that would be a very significant piece of compensation. But we can't, as part of our managerial, financial, and technical capability, we can't simply not run the system. We can't just take money from salaries and benefits at Currituck or EnviroLink and simply spend that 100,000 that way. We have to maintain the system with certified operators. So I appreciate the question, though. Thank you.
So just to be clear, you're contending that it is appropriate to compensate corporate officers at that level at a time when the system is not environmentally compliant. Am I understanding your testimony correctly?
I don't agree that, your comment about the system being environmentally non-compliant. And I think it's a bit argumentative, but we are running the company. And that includes making sure that we provide salaries and benefits for everybody that's employed to make sure that we can do the things we need to do to fix the system. So I can appreciate you wanting to, make whatever statement you wish to make, but being able to have the professionals at Currituck and EnviroLink to make sure we're moving forward on these projects is what's important. And we have followed through on that commitment. And the projects are in motion and scheduled to be completed in the near future. So.
But the schedule is not what it initially was when the company responded to the public staff show cause, is it?
No, there's been some developments and changes, and we've made that known to you and the commission.
But to be clear, the problems are not solved, correct?
I think some of the problems have been solved, but not all the problems, not all the challenges. And I think we've gone, to me, as I think, almost as far as we can go without having involvement from DEQ to review, analyze, and approve the permits we need to move forward. But I will defer to Mr. Myers on the details behind those projects.
Isn't your testimony the one that sponsors the monthly reports, not Mr. Myers?
That is true. And Mr. Myers can also testify as to the details behind those reports.
So just to be clear, if we attempt to ask Mr. Myers questions about the information in those reports, we're not going to receive an objection from counsel for Currituck?
Depends on what you ask.
Well, that's quite the predicament. How long has Currituck owned Carolina Village?
Upon information and belief, I think we closed in May of 2023.
When did Currituck start making its first improvement at Carolina Village? First shovel in the ground?
Not sure what you mean by improvement or shovel in the ground. Are you talking about connected to these capital projects we've been talking about or something else?
I'm asking when Currituck first began making repairs or improvements at Carolina Village.
Well, I've only been with Currituck since, as I mentioned, the end of August. I would offer that those projects began, the improvements that I'm aware of began on or about March 27th of 2024.
And would you agree that that is after Currituck was received multiple notices of violation from DEQ?
I think that is in general a fair statement.
Would you agree that that occurred after Currituck had been served with the public staff's motion to show cause?
You mean the projects that I mentioned started after the motion to show cause?
Yes.
I would agree technically, yes. I think the projects had been developed by Mr. Myers, subject to check, and Mr. Myers can testify, but I believe the capital plan for Currituck had been established and we were moving forward on securing the funding to launch those projects. But I don't think the motion to show cause that you filed had any dramatic or direct bearing on our commitment to implement those projects. Whether that occurred or not, we were still on track to getting the money to launch the projects. And so I think that is as interesting, and the timing doesn't look good, but I don't agree that your motion to show cause had any material impact on our commitment to the customers that we want to have at Carolina Village. We were committed to this community when we closed. We are committed today, and we will be committed to the customers going forward. So.
And is that commitment to customers unwavering?
I don't know what you mean by unwavering, but we are committed to the customers. We're still here.
Do you intend to stay here?
That is our commitment.
So I want to return back a moment to the conversations that we were having about the general ledger. Who is responsible for the entries in Currituck's general ledger?
I believe ultimately at EnviroLink, that would be Mr. Myers or Mr. Greer, the CFO.
Do you, as the president, have any responsibility for the accounting entries in the general ledger?
Directly, no, but indirectly, yes. As the president, the buck stops with me. And I have responsibility for the entire organization. And that includes accountability for the performance of EnviroLink, whether it be billing, collection, operations, environmental compliance, capital projects. And I think Mr. Myers will tell you, I am very much involved in that accountability process. I communicate with him multiple times every day, calls, emails, texts. He may not like it, but that's what happens. And so whether it is trying to resolve a notice of violation, challenges with a particular contractor, a billing question that might be out there. I know Ms. Holt had asked some questions about customer service. We get into that, we evaluate it, and we respond. So I am involved in as many issues as I can be involved in to provide that accountability for the entire company. And that is something that has been true, is true, and will continue to be true.
So going to some of the things that are happening at Carolina Village, you mentioned that progress is currently stalled because of DEQ. Is that correct?
In part, I think Mr. Myers will provide additional comments on that, but I think we had challenges with, number one, a contractor payment issue that I think has been addressed. Mr. Myers can check me on that. Number two, we have had challenges trying to line up well drillers. And then finally, I will just put out there that we can't require DEQ to review permits on any particular schedule. They have their schedules, staffing issues, and so we are subject to their schedule. So we can estimate that a project may be completed at a certain point, but in that project schedule, you'll see milestones for what we expect DEQ's review and approval timeline might be. And as we go forward, that may change. And so we try to be cautious and optimistic about those things, but as we've committed to you, we'll continue to let you know if those things change.
You mentioned a payment issue with the contractor.
I believe that is discussed in the recent supplemental monthly report that was filed with the commission several days ago. I believe the issue was one of the consultants had demanded or expected to be paid up front for the work before the work was done. And we did not think that that would be prudent to do. And so working that out was a bit of a challenge. And Mr. Myers can provide additional testimony on that to make sure that I'm being clear and consistent on that.
Okay, so I will trust you that if I ask Mr. Myers those questions, he's not going to refuse to answer me because it was not attached to his testimony.
We won't object. We won't object.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then is part of the plan for Carolina Village also an engineered option permit?
I believe that is part of the plan.
What impact will that have with DEQ?
I don't know.
Should you know that as president?
I know that through the work that EnviroLink does on those projects. You know, I'm at a different level and I have to trust EnviroLink and the work that they're doing. But to the extent I understand your question, you know, what impact that would have. But I believe, not that you're asking me this, but I believe the type of permit we're seeking will move DEQ away, and it will be a permit through the Department of Health, I believe, Health and Human Services, ultimately. So I'll defer to Mr. Myers, who can probably answer that question on the details behind that EOP.
Okay. If you'll give me a moment, Chair Mitchell. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Mitchell. Just a couple of other points. The first of which is you are Currituck's only employee. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. Has that always been the case?
I believe so.
Okay. And then you mentioned that Currituck is not charging the customers at Carolina Village, correct?
That is my understanding.
Would you agree that is because Currituck does not have commission authorization to charge the customer?
I believe that is fair. I think we need a CPCN. We have, in order to be a public utility, you need a CPCN. So, yeah.
And would you agree that part of this predicament is because Currituck acquired utility assets before it had a certificate of public convenience and necessity issued by this commission?
I understand your question. I think my view from a leadership position is we need to, as you know, from my testimony, we take ownership of not just our environmental record, to own what is ours and to make improvements. But going forward, there are things that I, as the president, want to see happen. And one of the things you raise is being able to close on a system and having the funds ready to go to repair the systems. If we are pursuing systems like Carolina Village, we need to be able to have those funds available. I understand you're maybe asking a bit of a different question, but I think that may be a public policy question, perhaps. I'm not sure if that is a question you're asking me to answer with a legal opinion.
No, I'm just
Okay,
asking if
okay.
Currituck is in the predicament that it is in
Yeah.
because it purchased a utility system before it had a certificate of public convenience and necessity
Yeah.
issued by this commission.
I understand that.
Is that a yes or a no?
I think that what I'm concerned about is that the question you ask is really about being able to recover costs in a future rate case. So I want to be careful that I don't answer in a way that precludes our ability to seek to recover costs in a future rate case that might be implicated by my answer. But with that caveat, we did close because it was a condition of the USDA loan, such as I've been informed by Mr. Myers before my arrival. Absent that USDA loan, we would have not closed. We would have been able to get the money, get through a CPCN and make the improvements. So I understand your question, but I think if we are going to own a system, we need to take ownership of the decisions that we make, learn from them, and not make those same decisions in the future if they are unfortunate or create issues for us or impact the relationship that we have with you as the public staff.
So is it your testimony that your Currituck's plans, your plans should outweigh the legal requirements and the commission's jurisdiction over how utility assets are purchased and customers are charged?
I don't know that it's my opinion. The law is the law, and we're going to follow the law. And the law will dictate how those things shake out. And so, for better or for worse, I am someone who's committed to facts and law. The facts change, I change my position. If the law changes, if the law is interpreted a certain way, then we accept that and we change course to make sure that we change our activities as a business.
So do you think the purchase of Carolina Village was consistent with the law? Did this transaction, proceed in accordance with applicable statutes, regulations, commission rules?
Well, I don't know the applicable statutes and regulations. I think that we have filed the application consistent with the statutes and rules that govern CPCN applications. And we're moving forward consistent with those rules.
What about in your experience with Carolina Water?
Well, I object to that. What is your question, please?
Mr. Klein has included in his professional credentials to establish his suitability to serve as Currituck's president, his extensive experience with regulated utilities to include Carolina Water. I was simply asking if what has happened with Currituck is consistent with his understanding of how things in this state proceed based on his experience with Carolina Water.
I'll overrule the objection. I'll allow the question and witness to answer the question to the best of his ability.
I'm not really sure I understand your question. And my experience at Carolina Water Service, if I recall, was quite a bit ago, but I don't think I don't think it implicated any CPCN applications. I think at most, we had a few notices of contiguous extension during my tenure. I need to, again, think back in time as you asked me on the fly. So
And then can you explain why you confer so much with Mr. Myers?
I think it's a demonstration of our managerial, financial, and technical capability as a company. We have an agreement with EnviroLink, and Mr. Myers is the president of EnviroLink. I think if there was evidence that I wasn't talking to him as much as I am, that would be a cause for concern. But again, Mike may not like how many times I call him in the morning, at night, on the weekends, but I am constantly communicating with Mr. Myers about all sorts of issues involving the business. And so, again, I think that is something you would expect me to do.
But the buck ultimately stops with you said, correct?
Yes.
So when there are issues with not complying with statute or EnviroLink has a rogue operator, the buck stops with you, correct?
Absolutely. For example, we had, because we own our environmental record, we had an NOV come in for Eagle Creek on Thursday. And I got with council and Mike and his team, and I said, what happened? And we found out that I think we did not read closely enough, perhaps the way that DEQ reads it, this pump and haul permit that we had for Eagle Creek. And within 24 hours, we had a response apologizing to DEQ saying, we're going to file these reports. We're not doing any pump and hauling activities, but the way that the pump and haul permit was created, we had to provide a notice to them based on the number of housing units. And so we own that. And we went very quickly under my direction, got with council, figured it out, and got a letter back to them within 24 hours. I think it went out that Friday, last Friday. So that's just one example of making sure that we not only prevent issues, but if there's an issue that is coming into the business at a material level, we're going to resolve it. I've personally gone out to meet with Mr. May and his team. And I introduced myself and I asked them to copy me on anything that they would like, NOVs or permits or letters or anything like that. So I can have direct information coming to me so that Mr. Myers and myself, we are both getting information on particular issues so we can collectively respond. We're both very busy people, and I may see something faster than what Mike sees in his email box. And so that's another demonstration of how we're exhibiting MFT, not just on billing or customer issues, but also environmental issues. That's important. As you know from my history, I'm a recovering senior environmental regulator, and compliance and enforcement is very, very important to me. And so as we move through this company, we're going to improve our track record. And I think you can see that. We'll talk about that later. So
That was a really long answer.
my apologies.
So I want to confirm again that Currituck is not charging customers at Carolina Village, correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Does Currituck intend to continue to serve customers at Carolina Village if it is unable to charge for services at Carolina Village?
As I sit here today, I think the answer to that is yes. We have been committed to these customers. As you know, we haven't been billing them for a year and a half. We're not billing them today, and we're not going to bill them until we receive a CPCN.
No further questions.
And so, thank you.
All right, redirect.
Any questions? Mr. Klein, you were asked about how many times you've been down to Carolina Village, initially in the cross-examination, were you not?
Yes, sir.
And, am I correct in my understanding that even though you might have not gone there with great regularity, that, the people for Currituck, for EnviroLink did, and you were in communication with them?
Yes, sir.
Right. Now, you were asked about what your salary is on an annual basis, and you were asked about the condition of lift stations overflowing. Were you not?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And first of all, is the fact that you have responsibilities other than on behalf of Currituck Water and Sewer, above and beyond that, having to do with Carolina Village?
Yes, sir.
Would you sort of tell us what some of those duties and responsibilities are for which you were paid?
I'm also responsible for Eagle Creek, which is part of Currituck. I'm also responsible as president of Crossroads Utilities in Indiana.
All right, the lift stations, how long have they been overflowing, to your knowledge?
I have no knowledge that they are overflowing or have overflowed. I don't have any personal knowledge of that.
Mhm. But you do know that when Currituck Water and Sewer bought this system, it had been out of compliance and in bad shape for many years, right?
Probably as long as I've been alive.
Okay. And you were asked about the fact that you're making improvements without being compensated by the customers, right?
Yes, sir.
Approximately how much money have you spent down there without having been compensated by the customers to
On
date?
On capital projects,
Well, whatever.
subject to check, we are spending upwards of 1.5 million.
Are you aware of the fact that you were asked some questions about North Carolina law. Are you aware of the fact that to the extent that somebody who owns a water and sewer system provides wholesale service to the owner of a mobile home park, that the owner of the mobile home park can charge customers through the rent? Are you aware of that?
I believe I am aware of that.
And was the Carolina Village a regulated asset when you bought it?
No.
I think in response to one of the questions that you were asked, you mentioned customer service, did you not?
Yes, sir.
What has been your experience with respect to responses of customers in Carolina Village, the complaints that they've made and the responses that Currituck Water and Sewer has made in response to those complaints?
Objection. The public staff did not raise any questions about customer service.
The witness answered a question about having Ms. Holt ask, and he gave an answer having to do with customer service when you asked him the question.
It was not customer service specific to Carolina Village.
I'll allow the question. Go ahead.
First, I'm aware that EnviroLink manages the customer service and, in my view, does an excellent job of that. I believe that Mr. Myers can testify about the customer service process, but there are work orders, service orders that come in. I believe that based upon my review, these customer service issues are handled and tracked in a timely and efficient manner in a system that is managed by EnviroLink. Broadly, the record reflects that the customer field hearing, public field hearing, was canceled because there were no public comments, questions or concerns, I believe, raised by customers. And so I believe that that is my response.
I think you, in response to one question, you said that there is delay as far as the scheduling is concerned of making repairs and replacements because you're waiting for some approvals and so forth from DEQ. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
First, as I mentioned, I think I'll let Mr. Myers get into the details of that. He can provide a more comprehensive response. Second, I believe, based upon my conversations with Mr. Myers and his team, we have been moving forward on the projects to the extent that the things that we can do without DEQ review and approval, we've kind of reached that point in the progress of the projects. And so those projects that require DEQ review and approval, we're coming up on those timeframes. And so I raised that issue to say, I don't know where DEQ will be on the review and approval of those projects, which may impact the future timeframes for completing the projects.
Can you tell me, Mr. Klein, whether Currituck Water and Sewer will invest in other struggling, unregulated water and sewer systems if no CPCN is granted, if you run across one of those in the future?
Objection. What question does that relate to?
It relates to the policy that the company is following. They were asking a lot of questions about whether, in my opinion, the gist of the question, whether it was advisable to buy a system when you didn't have a CPCN.
That was not the question.
I'm going to allow the Earl, I'm going to uphold the objection.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Mr. Klein, a couple of questions for you. Your counsel just asked you how much has been spent at Currituck Village, and you answered subject to check 1.5 million. At least that's what I heard. Do you recall that question and your answer?
Yeah, if I understood, it was how much have we invested on capital? And so we're spending upwards of 1.5 million. I don't have the specific today, how much we have spent, but that's the number.
Okay, so your response to his question is the plan is to spend 1.5 million, not 1.5 has been spent to date.
Yes.
Okay, and how much has been spent to date?
I don't have that figure in my mind, but I think Mr. Myers could probably give a better estimate.
And do you recall the purchase price for these systems?
It's a good question. Let me defer to Mr. Myers. I was not there for the purchase.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I understand your testimony to be that Currituck Water and Sewer has not charged customers for service at this for service since Currituck has owned the system. Is that correct?
That is my understanding since about May of 23.
Okay. I just want to make sure, is that a yes or a no?
Yes.
Okay. And has Currituck charged the owner of the mobile home village for the service?
I don't believe so, if I understand your question correctly. EnviroLink is performing services and they provide invoices to Currituck for payment. So I can't speak to the past. I think Mr. Myers can probably address that question better than I can, but it is my understanding that the services that are being provided, the invoices are being sent to us and accrued for payment. I don't believe, subject check, that any invoices are being sent to or were sent to the prior owner for payment, or the mobile home community is charging them. I just don't know.
Okay, so as I understand your testimony, you're describing money that would be going out. I'm interested in whether any money is coming in. Is Currituck receiving any invoicing the owner of the mobile home village for any service being provided?
No, ma'am, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, is Currituck paying EnviroLink for service that EnviroLink is providing?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know how much Currituck is incurring on a monthly basis for the service that EnviroLink is providing?
Yeah, I think two answers. One is there are two invoices. One is a monthly services invoice, and the other one is an additional services invoice. And it ties back to the agreement we have with EnviroLink. And so, roughly speaking, for the general operational services at Carolina Village, it's about 4,000 to 5,000 a month. That does not include reimbursements and other features that might come in on that bill. The additional services bill is connected to the agreement where when Envirolink is supporting Currituck in various matters, like for example, the rate case. And so there would be two bills. So
And approximately what is Currituck paying Envirolink for the additional services per month?
it varies. So I don't know if I have a good average for you, but it could be probably 50,000 to 100,000
A month
a month.
for work associated with the Carolina Village systems?
It's a range of additional services, and I think Mr. Myers can probably detail out the various line items in the additional services bill. So it just depends on what's happening each month and what additional services are needed. But as you know, for the past several months, we've had a lot of rate case CPCN activity, so.
Okay, can you describe for me the services that Envirolink is providing at the Carolina Village Mobile Home Park for which it's being paid $4,000 to $5,000 a month?
Yes, the agreement we have with Envirolink is a comprehensive turnkey agreement. And they provide, number one, operational services, operating the drinking water collection system and wastewater system, those three parts. They also provide, I believe, the environmental compliance, the sampling, the reporting. There is, as I mentioned earlier, the billing, collection, also the customer service. In theory, if you will, billing for the Eagle Creek and collection. So I want to make sure I'm not saying we're billing in the Carolina Village customers, but they have that capability should that occur. On the customer service side, they have a customer service staff. They receive calls from customers and they track them in their system and manage them accordingly. There's also the capital project management piece where the development, implementation, management, and execution of capital projects is handled by Envirolink. And then broadly, as we'll hear from Mr. Greer later, there are the financial management and accounting activities. And that's my broad answer to your question.
Okay, thank you. How familiar are you with the application that was filed in this proceeding?
A bit.
Okay.
I would defer to Mr. Myers on that.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask you some questions about it
Yeah,
and
thank you.
you can
Thank you.
defer them if necessary, and I will ask them of Mr. Myers. But the application proposes rates to be charged to customers, and I'm trying to find where they are in the application. Do you have the application in front of you,
I do not.
counsel?
I'm not sure we brought it. Does public staff have a copy of the application by chance?
Think we have a copy.
I have it here. Counsel, just take this one. He can look at this. My questions are basic. He can. So, as I understand the case, Mr. Klein, CWS has proposed rates in its application that it would charge customers were the commission to grant this application for CPCN. What can you tell me about how those rates were calculated?
Two answers. One is I don't know that I can tell you how they were formulated, but my understanding is that we have prepared these rates because this, as a mobile home park, has never had a rate structure. These rates were developed to be consistent with that of the Eagle Creek customers on the collection side in a practical way.
Explain what that means.
Well, the Eagle Creek, it's my understanding that the Eagle Creek customers are paying these rates, at least for the sewer side. And I think if I'm correct, subject to check, and Mr. Myers can correct me, but my understanding and communications with him is that on the sewer side, we tried to align the rates to be consistent with the Eagle Creek customers. So should this become, part of the Currituck Water and Sewer family, we have effectively one consistent rate.
So do I understand your testimony to be that the rates that you propose to charge the customers at this system don't necessarily reflect the cost to serve those customers at this system?
No, I think we've had testimony, and it may be Mr. Myers' testimony, that based on our experience that through EnviroLink of actually operating these systems for the last year and a half, we have a sense of what it would take to charge these customers.
And I think that's your testimony, actually. I'm
Okay.
looking at your direct testimony, page 13 at the top. You've got a question and answer as to the basis for the rates that the company proposes to charge. So I just was trying to
Yeah.
drill down a little bit farther into the specifics of how you all calculated those rates. Do those rates reflect a cost of capital?
I don't know.
Okay, who would know the answer to that question? Will Mr. Myers know the answer to that question?
He may.
Okay, who developed the rates?
I believe it would be EnviroLink.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Klein, you're aware that EnviroLink has been an operator at this particular site for many years. Is that correct? Or let me ask the question differently. You're aware that EnviroLink has been, are you aware that EnviroLink has been the operator at this site since 2016?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you also have testified today about the environmental compliance history at this site and the challenges that have been experienced at this site from a environmental compliance standpoint. Does it give you any concern that EnviroLink has been the operator at this site for for so many years and the environmental record is what it is?
In part, perhaps. I think Mr. Myers can certainly testify to the history that I don't have. I think, number one, as I've testified in my direct testimony, and I'll say it again here, we own the environmental record that we own. And I think that, in my view, that begins when we owned it, beginning in May of 23. Number two, I think Mr. Myers and I would probably agree that just because there's a notice of violation doesn't necessarily mean it is operator error. If you are provided a system to operate where it's been undercapitalized or mismanaged, deferred maintenance, you have what you have to operate. Certainly, I am concerned when I see, and this has happened over the past several months, where we have what I call operator error, where our operator will file a report late, or it's the wrong report. They grab the wrong file. I don't like that, and I think we need accountability there. And we need to move to provide better processes to ensure those things don't happen. But I think these systems have been a challenge for many, many years. And I think Mr. Myers, to his credit, has come in to try and be a solution provider in these systems. So, and I don't have an answer to say whether he is responsible or EnviroLink is responsible for the various NOVs that we talk about in this proceeding. So,
were you present at the February site visit?
no.
When did you first visit the site?
I'd have to go back and look at my calendar. I don't know off the top of my head.
Did you visit the site before April of 2024?
Again, I'd have to look at my calendar. Yeah, I don't recall.
So you can't tell me when the first time you visited the site was, approximate time of year. Was it cold outside? Was the grass green? Was the grass brown? I mean, just help me. I'm trying to
yeah,
get an
yeah.
understanding of
I
when
know-
you were first there.
Yeah. I, I, I don't want to give you a bad answer. I don't specifically recall. I've been there. I think I've testified about 3 or 4 times, this year. I'd have to go back and look, subject to check, and I'd be happy to look at that and give you an answer.
Okay, I would like an answer. As soon as possible. What was your impression of the systems when you first saw them?
Well, broadly, I'd say that the Carolina Village Mobile Home Park is not an upper middle class neighborhood. It is a,
No, I'm not asking, I'm just
Yeah,
asking, I
yeah.
want to focus on the
And-
system right
yeah.
now. We'll get to
And-
we'll get
yeah.
to the customers
Okay.
of the system.
and so the assets, and I've seen a lot of different systems in my life, and when I saw them, it was not perhaps the most, you know, well polished, if you will, stainless steel covers and things like that. It looked like a system that had been neglected for many years. And I think I saw some things that were curious to me, but it was not, I think, I would not characterize it the way that I think Mr. Junis has characterized it as the worst system I've ever seen. I've been doing this for many decades and I've seen a lot of bad stuff. And so does it need improvement? Yes. Yes, but I was not shocked or appalled at what I saw.
And so when when you first visited the site, do you recall having did any question arise in your mind as to the state of repair of the system or the way in which the system had been operated?
I think my general, not a question, but a thought was, if we're going to demonstrate managerial, financial, and technical capability, we can't acquire a system and not have the money ready to go to fix the system if it is one that has significant environmental challenges.
I understand
Yeah,
your
and
testimony.
so-
You've provided that testimony. I want an answer to my question, which was, when you were there for the first time, did the question arise in your mind about what has been going on here?
I don't think that specific question popped in my mind, but I thought, okay, what have we been doing? How has the system been operated or neglected? What are we doing? What are we going to fix? Are these the lift stations, A, B, C, and D? Let's look at the wastewater plant. How can we, take care of housekeeping? You don't need capital for housekeeping. We've had a lot of comments, rightfully so, from the public staff about housekeeping. Are the operators addressing housekeeping? I will tell you that I have communicated with Mike about, I've done spot checks. I've been out there and I noticed the grass is high. That may not be a water quality issue, but if I'm a customer that says, these people care about the system. And I've said, need to get out and mow the lawn, mow the system so it looks appropriate, looks like we care and we own it. And he did that. So I don't know if I have a good answer for you on that, but given my experience with multiple systems in different areas, I think these systems need to be repaired and we need to move forward on repairing them.
All right, do you, is my understanding of your testimony correct that the equity infusion or the equity contribution from the Bernhard Capital Group was closed on March 27th, 2024?
Yes.
Did you visit the site before or after closing on that financing?
Again, I'm going to have to go back and check, give you an
Okay.
answer. Yeah.
There's different information in the record about the number of customers served here. My understanding, though, is you've got 124 customers that are presently being served. Is that consistent with your understanding?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. There are 410 lots, or potential lots in this mobile home village. That's my understanding. Is my understanding consistent with your understanding?
Uh, I don't think there are 410 lots currently available. I know that Mr. Myers and I have had a conversation about the kind of the going forward plan or discussions. I think Mr. Myers can give you that answer, but there is, I believe, currently 124 customers. I think the application talks about 184 mobile home. And then there is potentially a future plan for 410 customers or lots. I think there is some history here from different governmental entities that are involved in Currituck County. I think Mr. Myers can provide a more detailed and accurate answer on those customer numbers.
So then is it your understanding that the potential exists for there to be approximately 400 customers at this site?
As I sit here today, to my knowledge, that is probably the outer number.
Okay. And when we say customer, when you say customer, do you mean a mobile home or manufactured home? Is that what you mean by customer?
Yes, however, I think when you exceed the 184 number and go to the 410, I think my recollection is there's a discussion on those being single-family homes or maybe condos or something like that, but subject to check. I don't want to say that it's only going to be mobile homes.
Okay, so so then is your understanding if you get past a certain number of occupied lots here or occupied sites here so that you have more than whatever that number is, you can cease to charge the reduced base charge and charge an REU base charge?
That is possible. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Are these, what can you, tell me everything you know about the customers of the mobile home that live at this mobile home village? Specifically, let me continue on with my question. Is this a full-time community? Are these folks that are in these homes only sporadically when they go to the coast, or what are the residents of this? Help me understand more about this community.
Yeah. Not much that I can share about the customers. Maybe Mr. Myers can offer his additional thoughts, but my sense is these are lower middle class, full-time residents. I don't think it's a VRBO type of community. I have been there. When I have been there several times, I really don't see a lot of people outside. There's a very large field in the middle. You can look at the map. I don't see kids out there playing. It looks like it has seen better days. So that would be my answer.
Okay, and what can you tell me about usage? I recognize we don't have meters at each of these homes, but what can you tell me about usage at this community?
I don't think I have anything to provide you with an answer on that.
So what's your response to what's the average bill going to be? Were customers charged at the rates you all have proposed here?
I would defer to Mr. Myers. I know that we have spoken not about drinking water consumption, but I believe the wastewater plant probably handles about 6,000 gallons per day. And so we can use that as a bit of a benchmark, and Mr. Myers can probably provide additional commentary on that.
Okay. Your direct testimony on page 23, in response to the question, has the environmental compliance of Carolina Village MHP assets improved under CWS's ownership? And then you go on and you say yes, and you give your answer. But in the course of answering the question, you say, together with the replacement of the ORC and backup ORC. What do you mean there? What's going on there?
EnviroLink had hired a subcontractor, Albemarle Environmental. And I believe the Farrs, Mr. Farr and Mrs. Farr, were the ORCs or backup ORCs at the system. That's my understanding.
And so they have since been replaced?
Yes.
When were they replaced?
I would say it would be within the last 60 days.
Why were they replaced?
The challenges that were identified by DEQ and the public staff during the February inspection, not happy with what was found. And I asked Mr. Myers to proceed to relieve them of their responsibilities and find a replacement.
Can you talk more about, I mean, explain what you mean by not happy with what was found?
I think that we can argue over whether what DEQ found and what the public staff identified is a legal obligation or a recommendation, but it's inappropriate. We should not, if we are going to demonstrate to this commission that we have MFT, I think a significant part of that is environmental compliance. And I say that as a former senior environmental regulator and as a former consumer advocate. We can't have that. And we take, as I mentioned in my direct testimony, we own that. And we have to be perfect, as near perfect as we can. Now, I understand MFT is not a standard, an objective standard of perfection, but we can't come in here and say we have MFT if we have continuous environmental challenges. So I have sat down many times with Mike and his team and said, we need to do a better job. We need to do this. We need to do that. And they've responded to that. We're not perfect yet, but we're getting better. And so the FARS, or Albemarle Environmental, was part of the accountability. I learned that they have been involved in other matters that I think this commission can take administrative notice of. And I have, as I learn my job and I understand and learn history and things like that, we needed to move on and find a better operator. And I think Mr. Myers has sought to do that and has acquired a new ORC for the system.
Can you explain to me what you know about the way EnviroLink contracts with operators? Because your testimony, and it may be in your rebuttal, but your testimony says that EnviroLink has 70 certified operators on staff.
Yeah.
As I understand your testimony here, the Albemarle Environmental was a subcontracted certified operator.
Yeah.
So was it routine for EnviroLink to subcontract out the responsibility for operating the system?
I don't know if it was routine. I know that that's what I encountered when I arrived and started to learn about this issue. I think Mr. Myers and I have had multiple conversations about operators. I know generally in the industry, finding certified operators can be a big challenge. It's not just finding a person, but what is the type of permit or that they have that needs to be operated? What class of certification? I had challenges in the past trying to find a spray irrigation certified operator to run a system. So my understanding is finding an operator may be a regional issue. It may be a challenge. It may be easy to find an operator in the Charlotte region. I think on the Outer Banks, it's not cheap to live there. It may be more difficult. You have challenges that are twofold. One, and I'll defer to Mr. Myers to expand on my observations here, but number one, operator is different than an ORC. An ORC, I think, legally must live within a certain distance from the facility. I think that's 50 miles, subject to check. Second, in the area, I think there are some regulatory hurdles that do not allow people from the Norfolk or the Virginia area to be able to serve across the state line and have that sort of approval to be an ORC in Virginia and in North Carolina, because as you know, Moyock is not that far from the state line. And so I believe DEQ is aware of that and they may be working to change that. But we have some headwinds there on just quickly trying to find a new operator, let alone an ORC.
So, Mr. Klein, your testimony says with the replacement of the ORC and backup ORC, which you've explained to me means Albemarle Environmental, You feel like environmental conditions are improving at Carolina Village. My question is this: why attribute the environmental conditions at Carolina Village to Albemarle and not to EnviroLink? Why did you stop
Well-
at Albemarle and not continue on to EnviroLink?
I'll go even further. It's my responsibility. Okay. We have an agreement with EnviroLink, and they have responsibilities, they have opportunities to do many things. And if Albemarle is not performing, I have to hold EnviroLink accountable to that. And if I'm not holding EnviroLink accountable, then I need to be held accountable.
So how did you hold how did you hold EnviroLink accountable here?
By directing them to move on from Albemarle as soon as possible. And let's bring in people that can do the job and do it right and achieve my standard of perfection, if you can, if you will. And so that's what happened.
So would you agree with me that to provide adequate service, a utility must have sufficient staffing?
Yes.
Must have sufficient human resources
Yes.
to provide adequate service. Okay. I'm gonna assume that you are correct, and I don't have any reason to doubt this, that an ORC is a regulatory term and there are some geographical limitations on the ORC. Currituck Water and Sewer owns the Eagle Creek system, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you're seeking to own, you own this system, but you're seeking to get a CPCN to operate as a public utility, is that
Yes, ma'am.
correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Currituck has other interests in the Currituck Water and Sewer has other interests in and around these two systems, is that correct?
Um,
For which there
we-
are applications pending with this commission.
no, that could be North Carolina Water and Sewer.
Okay. I'm aware of what's pending with this commission, so we'll just move on. But this is where I'm going with these questions. You got to have sufficient staffing to run these systems. If an operator in responsible charge has to live 50 miles from the system, you got to get one. And I help me understand, what sort of I guess I just don't understand your responses to my questions about what was going on here with Albemarle vis-a-vis EnviroLink. As I understand the record that you all have put in front of us, EnviroLink has been involved with this system since 2016. I don't have an answer on how long Albemarle was involved, but I'd like one. I'd also like to see whatever contract existed between EnviroLink and Albemarle. But if Albemarle is a sub, then EnviroLink, help me understand why we shouldn't attribute Albemarle's performance, which you have deemed a fireable offense. Why should we not attribute that to the contractor?
First, I think Mr. Myers can provide a better history to not only EnviroLink's activities at the site, but also the hiring and termination of Albemarle. I'll defer to him on that. But I know that simply being able to go out and when you relieve a sub-consultant and have to hire directly new employees, that takes some time, especially as I mentioned, the geographic challenges that we have. And I have to trust Mr. Myers to get that accomplished. And I have to, lead with grace and lead with some patience. But if this is something that persists, then we have to have a different conversation. If I believe that we need more operators and the environmental performance is not continuing to improve, I need to find additional people to make sure that it does improve permanently. And so, again, we own the environmental compliance record. I think things are getting much better. We'll have to see and monitor it. And that's my role, to monitor this and make sure that the environmental compliance continues to improve. We can't have a track record that's been for the past 40 years of whatever 150 different NOVs or violations. Can't have that. Even from May of 23 forward, I'm not happy with that performance. And I know I've only been here about a year, but things need to continue to improve. And if I'm not happy with the performance, we're going to need to make some additional changes. And certainly, I take great concern with the commission's direction and admonition that may be issued in this matter to take further action. So hear that from me today.
Do you exhibit, let's see. Exhibit 2 to the CPCN application, I'm gonna let your counsel give this to you. Includes bios for personnel and EnviroLink. You'll see this when you get it. Before, let me ask my question before you take it. There's project history associated with Mr. Myers. Can you take a look at this for the project history and help me understand what you know about the status of any of those projects, if anything? And when I say status, I mean operational status.
All right, we're looking at Exhibit 2 of my direct testimony.
No, it's Exhibit 2 to the CPCN application.
Oh, CPCN, okay.
Yes.
Okay, your question specifically is, what do I know about the pertinent work history of each person, or?
No, my question is, if you look under the bio given for Mr. Myers, it lists some projects. I think project history. I don't have it in front of me, but that's my recollection. Just, yes. So are you aware of any of those projects, what the status of those projects is? Whether those projects had environmental challenges at them?
Let's see, Fort Bragg, Forscom, Chapel Ridge, Lake Monticello, let's see, Cannon's Gate.
And if the answer is you don't know, that's
I
fine.
do not, I've heard of one or two of these, but I don't know anything about them.
Okay, that's fine. That's
Yeah.
fair. That's all I need to know. All right. In response to a question from Public Staff Counsel, I believe I understood your testimony to be that you are the only employee of Currituck Water and Sewer at this time. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am,
And what's your title?
President.
And I believe I heard her ask you whether Currituck Water and Sewer had ever had any other employees. Do you recall that question?
I think you may be right. My answer is, I don't believe we have had, well. let me-
Do you have any reason to, or would you agree, subject to check, that Mr. Myers was the vice president of Currituck Water and Sewer?
Yeah, I think before my arrival, I believe there were people that you could consider to be employees, but I can't tell you exactly, were they compensated employees or were they just titles, if you will? Does that make sense?
Yes,
So,
I hear your response.
yeah, okay.
But you don't have any reason to disagree, or you can't provide me any additional information as to Mr. Myers' tenure as the vice president of Currituck Water and Sewer?
No, not offhand.
Okay. The Mr. Myers, and there's a cover letter that's dated November 14th, 2023, that was submitted with the application for the CPCN, and it's signed by Mr. Myers on behalf of Currituck Water and Sewer. Are you aware of, have you seen this letter?
Maybe I can take a look at what you're referring to, just to be sure.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the September 30th, 2023 letter where you're going to ask me, Mr. Myers signed as vice president and manager.
Yes, I mean, is that your understanding too?
Um,
That's how I understand it.
I recall I think, seeing this letter at some point. So yes.
Okay. All right. It's your testimony today, at least as I understand it, that in January 2024, when you were officially named the president of CWS or of Currituck, I'm sorry, that title change or that title was given to you to make sure you had the clear authority to retain experts. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Who, and are you aware of who held that title before you did?
I don't know that, I don't know who had that title off the top of my head.
Okay. And would you assume, so are you aware of whether any prior officers or employees of Currituck Water and Sewer would have had authority to retain experts? Or,
I think that probably would have been, I'm guessing here, being new to this, but I'm guessing that the board would have directly contracted somebody or would have asked EnviroLink to do that.
okay, and what do you mean when you say board?
The board, the Currituck Water and Sewer Holdings LLC.
Okay. So you're referring to that point in time in which Currituck Water and Sewer Holdings became the sole owner of Currituck Water and Sewer subsequent to that? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, a key date for me is December 20th, 2021, when Clear Current came in and made an equity investment and became the majority owner of Currituck Water and Sewer. And so, my understanding of previous events is quite limited, but that's my understanding.
On that date, December 17th, 2021 or December 21st, 2021, do you know who the vice president of Currituck was?
I don't recall.
Okay. Do you know what the status of water quality permit 0004696 is? That's the non-discharge permit.
No.
Okay. In the testimony accompanying the application, there is mention of a wastewater treatment plant that has been, that I'm not sure exactly how it's described, but as I understood it, there was a plant that had been identified that could be moved onto the site to replace whatever assets are there now to treat the wastewater. Are you aware of what I'm asking you about?
In broad terms, yes.
Okay, and is it still the plan to use that wastewater treatment plant?
I believe that is still the plan,
Okay, do you know,
subject to Mr. Myers.
okay,
correct.
where is that wastewater treatment plant coming from?
It's a good question. I'm not sure exactly where it's located right now.
Okay. Would that plant be installed at the site in conjunction with the engineered, what is it, the engineered,
The EOP,
yeah, the EOP?
I believe that is one comprehensive project.
Okay. Do you know Kenneth Raber?
Yes,
Okay. Are you familiar with Mr. Raber's qualifications?
I have read his qualifications on paper.
Okay. Okay. I think that's all, Mr. Klein. Let me just check my notes and I will see if either of the other commissioners has questions for you. Mr. Klein, I believe it was your testimony today that CWS acquired the system. Let me see what you said, so I don't get it wrong. In May 2023, is that correct?
That's my belief, yes.
Okay, and there is in the record in this proceeding an amended agreement to the asset purchase agreement that's dated August 2023. Are you familiar with that document?
No, I know that probably Mr. Myers can talk about some of that history on the asset purchase agreement side, yeah.
Well, here's my question for you.
Yeah.
So if you look at it, so Exhibit 5 to the application, I'll tell you the name of the document I'm referencing. It's the First Amendment to the amended and restated asset purchase and utility construction and maintenance agreement. And there aren't dates in the signature blocks, but the agreement itself is dated as of May or August 15th, 2023. That's the effective date. That's after May. Why would there be an amended purchase agreement after a closing?
I don't know. I'm not sure I'm familiar with that. What is it styled again? What's the title of it again?
It's Exhibit 5 to the CPCN application. It's the First Amendment to the amended and restated asset purchase and utility construction and maintenance agreement.
Okay, and that's between Currituck or, I just want to make sure I understand.
Yes, it's between Currituck Water and Sewer and CVWW LLC.
I would defer to Mr. Myers on that particular agreement.
Okay.
Thank you.
But you don't have any idea why an asset purchase agreement would be amended after a closing had already taken place?
Not in this circumstance, no.
Okay, and what about there is sort of public staff provided some information regarding bills of sale dated 2022. And that predates the May 2023 date you've given me. What can you tell me about those bills of sale?
I know that they have raised those issues. It's before my time, and I think Mr. Myers is best able to address those questions and provide those answers.
Okay. Right. Mr. Klein, I've asked you questions today about EnviroLink's hiring of subcontractors, and you've testified regarding your direction, the direction you gave related to Albemarle Environmental. Have you entered into any sort of renegotiated contract with EnviroLink as a result of any concerns related to oversight of subcontractors?
No, not yet.
Is it your intention to?
I think those discussions are occurring internally, and I think that you may expect that we would talk to the public staff about those things and perhaps talk to the commission about that at the right time in the right manner.
In response to my questions, Mr. Klein, today, you've testified that EnviroLink is paid approximately $4,000 to $5,000 for monthly services, and then significantly more for additional services and the additional services payment varies based on whatever is going on at the moment. Is that just for Carolina, or is that just for the Carolina Village system, or is that for Eagle Creek and Carolina Village?
I believe the bills are arranged where they're for both. It's for Currituck, so it includes both systems, but the line items, you can tell this is Currituck, or I'm sorry, this is Carolina Village, this is Eagle Creek. Does that make sense?
Have the bills, have the invoices that EnviroLink has sent to Carolina or to Currituck Water and Sewer been provided to the public staff?
I don't recall that they have.
To the-
Yeah, I don't recall.
All right. All right, I would ask those bills or those invoices be provided as a late filed exhibit.
Yes, ma'am.
Going back to, let's see. I guess going back to as far back as Currituck Water and Sewer has them.
Thank you. We'll provide them.
Okay, last question. My review of the records, my review of the documents in this record are in the proceeding, reveal that EnviroLink is communicating with the environmental regulator on behalf of Currituck Water and Sewer. Is that your,
Yeah.
do you understand things
Broadly,
the
yes.
same way? And I'm specifically thinking of 2 letters provided to DEQ in response to notices of violation that were issued earlier in this year. Why is it, can you help me understand why EnviroLink is responding on behalf of Currituck and why Currituck is not responding directly to the regulator?
My response is, that was, I know exactly what you're talking about. I think they were March 5th letters. I think that was a moment where I learned about those letters after they were sent. I believe I needed to review them and observe them and maybe even sign them. And I think from that point, you're going to see if there were different records here, you'd see me signing things. We have I believe, for example, on Eagle Creek, we had a draft special order of consent that we're working through. I signed it. And so you will see the record reflecting my involvement growing on key matters. And so I think you're right for pointing that out. And I think given the significance in hindsight, I should have been more involved and aware of the response that was being prepared and perhaps put my name on it to show that we were very upset about that and committed to improving our environmental performance.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Klein. Let me see if there are questions from Commissioner Hughes. All right, go ahead. Actually, I'm realizing we need to give our court reporter a break. So we will take a 10-minute break. Let's go off the record, please, and we'll be back on. Commissioner Hughes.
Yeah, thanks. Just a few questions about, let's start with the managerial side of, I think you referred to it as MFT, managerial, financial, and technical capacity. You used the term several times during your today about owning it, that you will own it, which I think of as a managerial accountability term. Just following up on that, who would you say your boss is, Mr. Klein? Who's your boss?
The board.
The board, okay. And is Mr. Myers on that board?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so he's one of your bosses.
Yes, sir.
Um, when you talk to Mr. Myers morning, noon, and night, and you're discussing with him, what are the nature of those discussions? Is it about the operation of the?
It's about everything. It's about operational issues, environmental issues, could be billing issues. A lot of this year has been spent working on matters pertaining to this proceeding, responding to discovery requests, identifying areas of improvement, all the above.
Would you characterize those discussions as your role of president and his role as being the representative of the operator of the system?
Yes, I recognize that he is a board member, but he is not a majority owner. He is one, but he's in the minority. And so when I converse with him, it is as I am president of a business that has hired EnviroLink, a company that he's in charge of. And we're talking about performance issues. We're talking about responding to matters. We're talking about getting ahead of matters across the full range of activities in the business. So I do not, in short, view that I am somehow communicating up to a board member in a respectful way.
Okay, well, just to, I guess, wrap up, again, with the phrase owning it and taking responsibility, if someone were going to determine that responsibility had a repercussion, who would fire you?
The board.
The board, and your responsibility to operate the system, I think you present that the technical capacity largely resides in EnviroLink. Who would fire EnviroLink?
I believe that would be my decision, subject to the board.
So you would just request?
I think that would be a very significant decision, one that I would want to propose to the board, not simply do it. If I could, I'd have to read the agreement to make sure that I could do it and what the parameters would be. And then say, dear board, let's have a meeting. I want to talk about modifying the agreement or terminating EnviroLink as you propose. I think that is in my role as an executive, I would want to make sure that I inform the board of that determination.
Okay. Just thank you. I appreciate that. What in the financial, managerial, technical realm, I know your testimony talks about some of the examples of that. With all your professional experience, all the different places that you've worked, what is just one example that you are most proud of that clearly demonstrates managerial, financial, or technical capacity? Just what's the first thing that comes to mind?
In my professional career,
Yeah. Just, if you're thinking about, okay, what you're proud of.
Yeah.
You've been working at this utility.
Yeah.
What's your personal, through your lens of what makes a good utility professional? You're talking to your other utility professional buddies and say,
Yeah.
this is what we've done in my current job in the last couple years that you're really proud of? Just a very specific example. It can be either managerial, financial, or technical.
I would point to my former work in turning around Indianapolis Water, a matter that was before the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission. I believe the cause number is 43645. Commissioner Landis, former Commissioner Landis, presided over that.
Yeah, maybe my question wasn't clear. For in your career, I appreciate that, and I know a
Yes.
little bit about that system, so congratulations on that. But for your current job, what's an example of as you're owning everything that's been going on? What's an example in that job of just that you're proud of?
That we've accomplished right here. I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
something that you've done while you're the president of Currituck that you are personally, professionally proud of, that you would hold up to your peers as an excellent example of, not just the minimum, but just a really good example of financial, managerial, or technical.
Well, I think you're asking me to do something that perhaps doesn't comport with my I'm not someone that runs around and brags about things. I don't think right now I am yet proud of where we are as a company. And I mean that sincerely. I
Okay.
think,
I appreciate that. That's a good enough answer.
is that,
Yeah,
okay.
that's fine. Thanks.
However, this is the start, not the end.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Klein, just one follow-up to Commissioner Hughes's questions. Can you tell me what the purpose of the holding company is? What is the purpose of Currituck Water and Sewer Holding?
I think it is to serve, obviously, as a holdco for other potential opcos that may be formed. I did not form it, but that would be my understanding.
Okay. Are you aware that in the asset purchase agreement, also an exhibit to the CPCN, but it's the amended and restated asset purchase agreement and utility construction and maintenance agreement. So it's the asset purchase agreement that exists between the Currituck Water and Sewer and Equity First that was later amended, as we discussed earlier in my questions to you. But there are rates set forth in section 4.3. Is this ringing a bell?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I'll ask Mr. Myers about it. All right, we will go to questions on commission's questions, and we'll start over here with public staff.
You were asked questions about the agreement between Envirolink and Currituck, correct?
Yes.
Have you endeavored to terminate that contract based on Envirolink's performance at either Eagle Creek or Carolina Village?
No, ma'am.
Is that because you think that Envirolink is operating up to the standards set forth in that contract?
No. That's not, no. I have testified, I believe, in response to Chairwoman Mitchell's question, that conversations about changes to the agreement may be ongoing and may be something that the public staff and Currituck could talk about in the future. And so I think that's as far as I can go with my answer at this point, but if I understand your question.
Did Currituck act imprudently when it acquired Carolina Village without the capital available to fix the issues that it purchased?
I don't believe so.
Did Currituck act imprudently when they engaged a contract operator that didn't have sufficient staff to operate the system at Carolina Village?
I don't know if there's a foundation for that question, but I'll just say I don't believe so.
Nothing further.
Mr. Klein, you were asked some questions about the lots and the permits and that type of thing, and the number of mobile homes that are served in Carolina Village.
Yes, sir.
Let me see if I can ask you some of these. I think I've got the answers to that, and ask you to agree with me, if you don't mind. That there are 410 mobile home lots. The county limits exist to 184 home sites, and the assets are only permitted to serve 124 homes. Would you agree that that's a number that you can live with?
That rings a bell. Yes, sir.
If you don't, I'm in real trouble, so I'm glad you did that. You were asked questions about some other potential systems that are being addressed in Currituck County by CWS. What about the FOST and the FLORA systems?
Yes, I think those are in what formerly was, I think, subdocket 1 and subdocket 6, the notices of contiguous extension.
And I think in response to some of the questions of the chair, you said that the rates that have been requested in this case for Carolina Village are the same rates for Eagle Creek.
I believe that's the case.
And is my understanding correct that the rates that were approved for Eagle Creek were those that had already been established by Sanders, the owners of the system, before CWS bought that system?
Yes, that's my understanding.
So when that acquisition took place, of the Eagle Creek system, there were no changes in rates. Is that fine? Is my understanding correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
All right. Let's see. Do you know to the extent to which the contract operator, Albemarle Environmental, was honest in its dealings with EnviroLink?
I don't know, but I would think that's a good question to ask.
Is it your view that the ORC is the eyes and boots on the grounds in this situation for EnviroLink with respect to Carolina Village?
Yes, sir.
To your knowledge, was EnviroLink authorized or provided capital to make improvements before Currituck Water and Sewer acquired the assets in Carolina Village?
I don't believe they were authorized.
You were asked about why EnviroLink wasn't terminated, but Albemarle Environmental was. What challenges, if any, would you have in finding a contractor to replace EnviroLink, having to do with such things as costs, time, and the impact on the system?
I think replacing a contractor on the system would require, obviously, time to identify a replacement. I think there would be certain transaction costs in trying to identify, evaluate, and approve a new contractor. There might be costs associated with the new contractor ORC's rates that may be much more than what we were paying the previous contractor. So there's a lot of factors in there. It's not simply a knee-jerk reaction, something that can happen overnight without potential repercussions to rates.
All right. Will you state whether or not you are proud of the proud of working with Bernard Capital to invest in $6 million in the CWS system and having that as your mission?
Yeah, I am proud of that. I am proud of that. There's more work to be done. Yes.
And you were asked who you're responsible to. You said you were responsible to the board. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And to whom is the board responsible?
Ultimately, Bernhard Capital.
Right. And who owns this? Who owns the controlling interest in Currituck Water and Sewer?
Clear Current LLC, which is a Bernhard Capital Partners company.
That's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
All right, with that, Mr. Klein, you may step down. And Mr. Finley, I'll take a motion.
We'll move his exhibits into evidence.
All right, having heard no objection to that motion, I will allow it.
We will call Mr. Michael Myers to the witness stand.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, that's good. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, here, I got one for you.
All right, good afternoon, Mr. Myers. If you would, raise your left hand, right hand on the Bible, raise your left hand. Actually, other way around. You swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
All right.
Will you state your name and business address for the record, please?
Michael John Myers, business address is 4700 Homewood Court, Suite 108, Raleigh, North Carolina.
Mr. Myers, with whom are you employed in what capacity, please?
I'm employed directly by EnviroLink, and I hold the role of president there. I also hold roles in other companies, Longleaf Utility as a manager there, North Carolina Water and Sewer as a manager there. I am a manager within Currituck Water and Sewer Holdings as well.
All right, Mr. Myers, on August 28, 2024, did you cause to be pre-filed in this docket testimony and question and answer form of some 23 pages?
I did.
Are there additions or corrections you need to make to that testimony at this point?
No, sir.
If the answers set forth in the pre-filed testimony were asked of you today, would your answers be the same?
I believe so.
And in addition to the filing of your direct testimony on August 28, 2024, did you submit along with that 3 exhibits?
That sounds correct.
Chair Mitchell, we would ask that Mr. Myers' direct pre-filed testimony be copied of the record as though given orally from the stand, and that his exhibits submitted to that testimony be marked for identification as pre-marked in the filing.
All right, the 23 pages of direct testimony filed in this docket on behalf of Michael J. Myers on August 28, 2024 should be copied into the record as if given orally from the stand. The exhibits to that testimony will be marked for identification as they were when pre-filed.
And Mr. Myers, has there been put together on your behalf a summary of your testimony?
That's correct.
We would move that the summary of Mr. Myers' direct testimony at the appropriate time be copied into the record.
All right, the summary of Mr. Myers' testimony will be copied into the record as if delivered orally from the stand.
And he's available for cross-examination.
All right, you may proceed.
Mr. Myers, I would like first to just go through a few things in your affidavit that you filed in response to the public staff's show cause.
Can I get a copy of that from, we have a copy?
Counsel, do you have a copy of his affidavit from the show cause proceeding?
We don't have it here. We don't have it here.
Yes, Mr. Finley, you want to look at it before they put it in front of him?
No, that's all right.
Okay.
This is on.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, y'all set?
Yeah.
Okay. So EnviroLink began operating the system at Carolina Village pursuant to an agreement from January 2016. Is that correct?
That sounds correct. Yes, ma'am.
How long have you personally been involved with the situation at Carolina Village?
I think my first meetings or kind of first trip out to Carolina Village would have been somewhere in I'll call it the fourth quarter of 2015.
Okay. And is it true that you entered into an asset purchase agreement for the assets associated with Carolina Village when you were acting on behalf of another utility, specifically Old North State Water Company?
That's correct.
And is it also true that the day on which the asset purchase agreement with Currituck for these assets was entered into coincides with the the termination and release of the asset purchase agreement between Old North State as well as EFNC? Let me rephrase. That was alphabet soup. I apologize. So is it true that Currituck entered into the asset purchase agreement to purchase Carolina Village under your signature on the same day that Old North State terminated an existing asset purchase agreement for those assets under your signature?
I don't know that I recall that specifically, but I'm going to assume that that's a possibility.
Okay. For reference, those come from dates of documents provided by the company in discovery. So assuming that those dates are roughly correct, that would mean that since 2016, you have had you've had an interest both in purchasing Carolina Village as well as operating Carolina Village.
I think that's fair. If I can, maybe go on to the history here a little bit. I think that would be helpful if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got involved, as you're saying, with Carolina Village in, I'll say, late 2015, early 2016. Had meetings with the owner. The owner at that time was struggling finding an operator. I'm sorry.
That's
Thanks,
Yeah.
Judge. Yeah. The owner at that time was having struggles finding an operator, largely due to the deteriorated condition of the facility. We were introduced to them by DEQ and through the owner's engineer at the time. We went out, we inspected it. I think we concurred that the system was in pretty dilapidated condition. 50-year-old system, the treatment plant and the collection system in particular were, showing a lot of signs of deteriorating. We talked to the owner about entering into what's called a special order by consent with DEQ. We reviewed what the engineer's recommendations were at that time, what kind of his plans were. We felt like the owner was committed to making the necessary improvements in the system at that point in time, both on the water and sewer side. And so we did enter into an agreement to operate it. And certainly we feel like Carolina Village has I would call it strategic value for that end of the county. I think I've often said Carolina Village on its own is not very attractive from either a physical standpoint or even from a business standpoint, but there's other factors, just its location and other factors associated with the Carolina Village project that make it attractive.
So is it fair to say that it has been part of your personal master plan?
I would say there has been a plan to get Carolina Village, a plan to get it improved, get it turned around, get it into compliance. I would say, is it part of my personal master plan? I don't know that.
Professional master
Oh.
plan, should we say?
I certainly think from a business standpoint, there's strategic value to Carolina Village that, make it attractive.
Okay. And so you were at one point aware of the deferred maintenance at Carolina Village and were interested in purchasing it on behalf of one utility, correct?
That's correct.
And then after continuing to see, I suppose, years perhaps of deferred maintenance, you then proceeded to terminate that agreement and enter into a new agreement to purchase Carolina Village. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And the deferred maintenance that Currituck continued, if you would, deferring maintenance at Carolina Village after it purchased it for a period of 8-9 months. Would you agree?
I would agree, yes, we were unable to implement what I would call the capital improvement plan there. I think as the application stated, there's in talk, I think with Mr. Klein, that, initiating those capital improvements were tied to the pursuit of a USDA loan at the time.
Was Currituck unable to take care of the housekeeping things that Mr. Klein described prior to that equity infusion?
No, I would say that, there are certainly some housekeeping in particular issues that were prevalent there that needed to be done and not up to what we expect out of our operators.
Can you describe for me the process let me go back. Were you involved in the selection of Albemarle Environmental?
I was involved in how that all went down. As our manager had a need, the manager for that area had a need to find an operator. He came with a recommendation to hire Albemarle Environmental, which I approved.
Do you recall when they started working for EnviroLink?
I've actually, since Chairman Mitchell asked that question, I've been racking my brain and I cannot recall. So.
Okay. Is the agreement between EnviroLink and Albemarle Environmental, is that reduced to writing anywhere?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Did you mentioned that Albemarle Environmental was recommended. Did you have any personal exposure to them prior to selection, or were you relying on the recommendation from one of your staff members?
I certainly had heard their name from different people, and I had some exposure, not directly with them, but indirectly with conversations with, again, another utility out in that area. Again, not direct exposure to them, but just kind of indirect exposure.
At what point did you become directly involved with Albemarle Environmental?
I would say there has been a couple of occasions since they've been employed by EnviroLink where the manager asked me to get involved with discussions with them. And then certainly after, actually a week or two prior to the February inspection, I was setting in on a meeting between our manager and Albemarle Environmental.
And just to be clear, the site visit that in many ways started this process or started the show cause portion of this was in February of 2024, correct?
It's my understanding, yes.
And Albemarle Environmental was actively operating the site at Carolina Village until August 30th of 2024. Is that correct?
They were functioning as the ORC for the system, yes, up until that date.
So there is a significant period of time after DEQ became involved in the situation, after potential negative action was taken against the FARs, that they continued to be responsible for Carolina Village. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then I'd like to go to some of the chair's questions that she brought up for Mr. Klein, but they're in your affidavit, hence the reference to the affidavit. You discuss in your affidavit compensation between EnviroLink, the mobile home park, end user customers. Does that ring a bell?
Vaguely, but if you can refer me to the.
Sure. If you would go, so it's page 4 of your affidavit, and it is paragraph 23. And according to that, EnviroLink stopped charging Carolina Village MHP because Currituck had closed on the assets. The next paragraph, paragraph 24, but EnviroLink inadvertently continued to sell invoices to Carolina Village. MHP through the end of 2023. Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, that's what I state in my, yes, ma'am. And I would say there's a one distinction I might make from that is while there may have been invoices sent, there was no payment received. So
Would you agree that the sending of invoices is evidence of an intent to charge?
it's charging for, EnviroLink was charging for operational services, if that's what you're asking.
Right. We had asked questions about whether EnviroLink or anyone was being compensated, and I wanted to make clear that Currituck, you've said, was not being compensated, but EnviroLink, who was operating the system on behalf of Currituck, had been sending invoices to the mobile home park owner through the end of 2023, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Then another portion in your affidavit I wanted to ask you a question about deals with, it is on page 5,
Mhm.
paragraph 34, and that discusses bills of sale. According to your affidavit, the purchase price for Carolina Village was paid in February of 2022, and bills of sale were exchanged for those. Is that correct?
That is, yes, that's correct.
And was there an intent to return that purchase for the park owner to return that purchase price if closing didn't occur?
It's consistent with kind of the terms of the, I think as you call it, the prior utility. There was a purchase price paid prior to getting, prior to their actually submittal of the application into the Utilities Commission for a CPCN out there. And so, yes, this transaction had terms similar to that, where there was funds paid and bills of sale exchanged, but closing did not happen.
So you'd spent the money and you'd gotten the stuff, but you didn't have the real property. That was the last piece, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And how would you describe the current staffing of operations at Carolina Village? Do they have dedicated, is there someone there, boots on the ground all the time?
If I can, I'd maybe ask this in the kind of concert with both Eagle Creek and Carolina Village, because they're, by the way, the crow flies, they're about 3 miles apart from each other, plus or minus. And the staff that we use there supports both facilities. So we are currently running a 24-hour, 365-day staffing at at Eagle Creek that does also support Carolina Village and the operators in responsible charge of service both of those facilities. The current operators in responsible charge service both of those 2 facilities.
How many other facilities are those? So let's, what are their names so we can refer to them instead of just people?
Yeah, I think Todd Robertson is one of the gentlemen, as well as Crystal Hutchins, I believe. So,
How many other facilities are Mr. Robertson and Ms. Hutchins also responsible for?
they are responsible for others. The exact number, I'm not sure. I know exactly. So,
5 or more?
in the case of Todd, I don't believe it's that many. In case of Crystal, I think that's probably true.
Okay. With respect to some of the other services that EnviroLink provides, how many in-house staff does EnviroLink have to do the customer service, the billing?
Yeah, our customer service and billing department has a staff of 5 individuals, including the billing manager. Capital, I think as Mr. Klein called it, capital projects and management, there's a staff of 3 individuals who are in that department currently. Our accounting department I hope I get this right, John, but I think you have a staff of four? Four.
And,
Go ahead.
and that handful of folks, they have responsibilities for many different systems. They don't just work with Currituck, correct?
That's correct. We operate, they support a number of different facilities across the North Carolina and other states.
So if we needed to identify the guy or the girl for Carolina Village, who would that be at the end of the day?
For what role? For operator and responsible charge, is that?
Well, we can start there.
Okay. If you're talking about the manager, right now, that would be Matt Huckle.
Okay.
He would be the manager. And he would be the guy that I would go to with any questions or things like that. So, and what the operator and responsible charge for Crystal Hutchins would be for the water, and then Todd Robertson for the sewer.
Okay. And for billing issues, any particular person?
Deborah Massey would be who I would go to.
Would Miss Massey take care of customer service as well?
Currently, yes.
Okay. Is there any intent to add additional staffing at EnviroLink?
We're currently looking at the structure of our billing and customer service and thinking about splitting those into two different groups. And so will that mean additional staffing potentially?
Okay. Who is responsible for putting together regulatory filings for Currituck?
That has changed, I think, since the relationship with Currituck started. Originally, back when we started this at Carolina Village and Eagle Creek, that was a gentleman by the name of Aaron Gold. I might have been, yeah, I think it was Aaron Gold. And it's now switched over to John Greer.
Who is responsible for vetting those filings to make sure that they are complete, accurate information? Where does the buck stop for that?
Ultimately, myself.
Okay. Did you at any point have concerns about the prudency of the USDA loan?
I did.
Did you do anything about it?
Certainly, I did ask the questions of, whether this was the direction that that Currituck should continue to go. I think the thinking was for two reasons, kind of the nature of how that process evolved, along with the amount of investment that we had put into the USDA loan, that it was still the direction of the board to kind of continue to go down the USDA loan route.
So you said continue to go. So to make sure I understand, there was a point where it seemed imprudent, but there were other considerations where you didn't abandon ship.
That's
Is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay. Do you know when that tipping point would have been?
I would have said it was probably somewhere in the range. Let's see, Matt was hired in August of 23. So I'm going to, and I can go back and verify this, but I'm going to speculate it was maybe about in or around a year before that time.
So that would have been August of 22?
I would say later than August, but maybe third or fourth quarter of 22.
Okay. How many other businesses operate out of the same physical location that Currituck is housed?
So we have a family of companies, but EnviroLink and Longleaf and Currituck Water and Sewer, and then we have a company called North Carolina Water and Sewer as well. And then there's a company called Two Rivers LLC, which does not operate out of that, but that's my family's personal LLC. And I think you could call that basically operating out of that facility as well.
Do all of those businesses have the same phone number?
I would say yes. I would believe so. Yeah.
So whenever someone calls, how does the person answering the phone decide which hat they're going to wear?
So when somebody calls those numbers, there is first thing they get is an IVR system that directs their call to the appropriate person, and it's answered as EnviroLink. And so if they have a question about one of the other, one of the other companies, typically they know to ask that question.
But is it fair to say that it's not immediately apparent that there are multiple entities running out of that office?
I think that's fair. I mean, I would have no problem recognizing that.
Okay.
Check with my,
Mhm.
So just one other question. With the, you mentioned that you had it in mind, third-ish, fourth quarter of 2022, that the loan might be a problem. What was that based on at that point?
So part of the discussion, I'll call it that, when we first entered into the relationship on the USDA loan, we were told, here's the process to get to closing. And as we got into it, the goalpost kept moving, right? They kept adding something on that needed to be done before, that was not initially disclosed to us, that needed to be done. I think in hindsight, part of that came from the USDA, at least under the business and industry program, which is where we were operating. They had to rely on experts within USDA in other departments for this particular loan. And I think they were using the criteria and the requirements of under other programs and applying them here just because that's what they were doing. For example, we had to go get a finding of no significant impact, or the acronym is a FONSI. That was not something that was disclosed to us up front, that we would have to go through that. And our read of the business and industry program was that was not required of a private entity, but we did have to go through that. So that's just kind of one example, and there kept examples going through as we went through the process. And so, recognizing that, certainly we were under, and again, this was largely being driven by the closing on the Eagle Creek system, because we had obtained approval from the commission. The Sandler utility wanted to close on it. We were pushing to get this loan closed. So there was discussions of, hey, look, should we abandon ship and, look at go another route?
Ultimately, that decision was made in the first quarter of 2024, correct?
That is correct.
And just to confirm, you've been intimately involved with Currituck since inception, correct?
I think that's fair to say.
Are you aware of the testimony, content, assurances related to having equity that were made during the Eagle Creek proceeding?
I think I'm the one that made the representation. And I'm not 100%, but I have recollection of making a representation that if we did not if we did, decided not to go with a loan, that we had the ability through Bernhard to get equity to be able to close the transaction. Yes, I remember. I do remember what you're talking about. And I remember us having some discussions about that during our meeting that Mr. Klein set up when we were talking about, when he was testifying about exploring the prudency of the interest rate.
And just to be clear, the meeting that you're referencing with Mr. Klein took place in January of 2024,
That's correct.
and you started to have concerns in the fourth quarter of 2022.
That's correct.
Okay. When did Currituck initially start pursuing that USDA loan?
The decision was made on the date that there's a term sheet that was executed between Currituck Water and Sewer, and I can't remember the exact date of that term sheet, but that would be the date that I would go to answer your question.
Would you accept subject to check that that was around May 2021?
I would, subject to check, I would agree with you.
And would you agree, subject to check, that the asset purchase agreement related to Carolina Village was executed initially in February of 2019?
Subject to check, I don't know that I can recall, but I'd say subject to check, I'll agree with you.
No further questions.
All right, we've come to the end of the day. We will be back on the record in the morning at 9 o'clock. Let's go off the record, please.